We are right in the heart of the Formula One offseason going into the 2025 F1 season. And I know what you're thinking. There's not a lot going on. We know all the driver moves already. Testing hasn't really started, although we can talk about a little bit with Ferrari. But trust me, there are some rumblings. There are things going on behind the scenes. People are talking at the team facilities. There are cars getting out on track, which we'll talk about, even if it's not an official testing capacity quite yet. So we want to get into everything that we've heard from behind the scenes going into 2025. Jeremiah is going to share some info that he's pulled from the drivers' various social media accounts with what they've been going up to. And so with that, this is Turn One. We're your host, Thomas.
Jeremiah.
Let's start with everybody's favorite team, right? This is, I think, worldwide, everybody's favorite team. Aston Martin, right?
Well, half clearly. Of the team.
Yeah, Alonso. He's a worldwide favorite compared to Lance Stroll. So I'm not even going to talk about Lance Stroll. I want to talk about what's happening at the factory. Aston Martin fans, hear me out. You're going to have a good team one day. I promise. I promise, and I'm rooting for you. But in 2025, you're going to be right in the midfield in the 4 through 6 range, as you have been the past 2 seasons, and that's okay. And I know you're excited about Adrian Newey coming in. But here's the issue in 2025 when Adrian Newey comes in. We talked about this, Jeremiah and I did, the past couple of months since they announced it, like October or November of last year this was happening. His impact isn't going to be seen this year, and Adrian Newey pretty much confirmed as much in an interview this past week. They said that they asked him, they're like, hey, are you going to contribute to 2025? And he said, my concentration will clearly be on the 2026 car. Mm-hmm. So that was a pretty straightforward statement. He went on to say that no doubt Lawrence Stroll will want me a little bit involved in the 25 car, but whether or not I can contribute anything, I've got no idea until I start. And if you're like, no idea until you start, dude, you were hired 4 months ago. No. His official start date with Aston Martin is not until March 1st of 2025.
Yeah, he's got a lot of prior things with Red Bull that he's still working out. I guess there's a couple things written in the contract where they said that he was going to be with them for a little bit longer than what I think Aston Martin fans were hoping for.
Yeah, and the team went on to say for his contributions, for Newey's contributions to 25 and 26, that he is going to focus on 26 because honestly, they don't have enough wind tunnel time and all the other testing time that they need for him to split his time between the new cars. They would rather 100% of Adrian Newey go to 26 than, 80% of Newey go to 26 and 20% go to 25. That's not going to pay off. So again, Aston fans, just give it one more year. I promise, give it one more year and you'll see some improvements.
For half your
did you have anything on their drivers?
Fernando Alonso has been posting some pretty sick stuff because Aston Martin's releasing, they've already released, but they're showcasing the Valkyrie right now, which is, their baby. I mean, it's their street legal F1 car, the V10 engine mixed with the hybrid system. Basically, you take an F1 car as it is right now, put an actual body on it instead of, an oversized go-kart, and give it that old, sweet V10 instead of the new V6s that they're rocking with. And Fernando Alonso took it around the track, and dude, it sounds so good.
It's an F1 car with a license plate and fenders.
Yeah, and doors and a windshield. But meanwhile, Lance Stroll's been doing stuff too. Don't really care. I don't know. He's posted so. If you're a Lance Stroll fan, I'm sorry. He's posted stuff with him with Longhorns, where he's throwing up the horns, and he's posted some. He's been around, but we don't really care about him too much on this show. Sorry, not sorry.
No, that's for the Aston fans out there, everybody knows this. I mean, it's not an unknown quantity that he's the hindrance to the team. Whether that changes in a year, probably not. So even going into 26, y'all might have a really good car. But we'll see. I mean, maybe he can do something with it. Maybe.
Hey, if Red Bull is able to have Max and Perez, y'all can have Fernando and Lance.
If he can finish in the top 10 consistently, you've got a chance.
Yeah.
Honestly, you do. Okay, I want to move over to Ferrari. So, preseason testing isn't a real thing right now. That's in the next coming weeks and months, right before we get up to the first race in Australia this year, I think,
Mhm.
right? Not Bahrain this year. Although I think the testing is still in Bahrain, which
I think
is
that's correct.
it's in Spain and Bahrain. And then they go to Australia, which is confusing. But Ferrari has been putting their drivers on track with two different cars. They have been running what they're calling testing previous car programs, TPC programs, where they've had Charles and Lewis taking laps in the SF24 and the SF23 cars. So the 2024 Ferrari F1 car and the 2023 Ferrari F1 car. Well, Charles went out there in the 2023 car, did well, had some good laps. Lewis went out there in the 2024 car, did well, had some good laps. And then they hand over the 2023 car to Lewis, and pretty much one lap in, he crashed and destroyed the thing.
I'll say this about that, because I've actually seen some videos on this, because during preseason testing, whenever he was at McLaren, he crashed that car too, then went on to win a championship. When he went to Mercedes in preseason testing, he crashed a car, then went on to win 6 championships. So it's not a matter so much of him not having the ability. It's about him finding the limits of what this new car is capable of in a way that the Mercedes might not have been able to do from his previous team. So he's really trying to find exactly where the edge of what he can take this car to is. And unfortunately, sometimes you step over that limit. And honestly, if you're not doing that, you're probably not finding the limit.
100%. I don't think any Ferrari fan should be concerned about Lewis crashing the car because it could be two things, right? Two major things could have happened. Either one, like Jeremiah said, Lewis is pushing the car to the limit, which he should be doing. He's trying to give his team some information, or due to the team already running previous cars on track, they're looking for specific information that they can carry into the 2025 car. They might have had him running a really wonky setup that would have been abnormal for any driver, and maybe that caused him to crash. So either way, either he's pushing the limit or the car was set up horribly. Either way, it's not, anything against Lewis Hamilton driving. It will be highly ironic though if he takes the track in Melbourne and right off the grid puts it in a wall.
Hopefully he gets that out of his system in the preseason testing. But no, the whole previous car testing, I understand. I mean, there's multiple different things. Like without being a part of the team, there's multiple ways you look at something like that. One, they're trying to find what kind of car suits Lewis Hamilton's driving style. So maybe the SF23, maybe it handled in corners differently or handled on straights differently than the SF24, and the team is aware of the differences. So now they're giving it to Hamilton so that he can see what kind of car he responds better to as they start making enhancements to. I mean, obviously not building the SF25; it's probably already built, but upgrades throughout the season. What kind of upgrades are they looking to bring? Are they looking to enhance the corners? Are they looking to bring more straight line speed down the straights? I mean, there's a whole plethora of different things that they could be testing.
They've got a lot to figure out with Lewis, especially if this is a long-term play with Lewis. I think in my head, I feel like Lewis is only going to be there for 2 seasons or so, but I think a lot of people in the F1 world think he's going to be there for much longer. He could have, 6 more years in Formula One if he wants to, and he could spend all those at Ferrari if they'll have him. So this could be not only just something for this year, but something for 2026 as well. What have you got on those two drivers?
Not a lot. I mean, Charles Leclerc does what he typically does. If you ever look at his Instagram at any given moment, it's always him with his sponsorships. And I think there's like a 8 Sleep or Sleep 8. I don't know. Some company makes mattresses. I don't know, man. It's a bunch of him working out and him sleeping on mattresses. And you look at Lewis Hamilton's, it's always quick with the style. It's him iced out with clothing or decked out in Ferrari gear, which is a wild sight to see. But, I can tell, me personally, I you might get a different opinion on this, but to me, it looks like he's spending a lot of time at the factory, getting to know the guys, getting to know the cars, getting a familiarity with the whole structure of how this team works.
I think that some of it, and before we started recording, I always poke fun at Lewis Hamilton because Jeremiah hates when I do that. And I said that Lewis just always does it for the appearances because that's what his whole thing is about. It's just for the appearances. But I agree with you. I think he's spending a lot of time in the factory. I do also think from a marketing standpoint, this dude has a decade plus of Mercedes footage, and they need a ton of Ferrari footage to have for us for this coming season. Like, they every time Ferrari rolls out an ad or has billboards or banners or posters up, they need Lewis in Ferrari gear. And I think he's just posting a lot of those sessions that they have him taking around and taking pictures of, because he's got to build up a backlog of him in red, which is odd. And you know what? I'm with the fans. The HP partnership is a little distracting.
Yeah, it's odd. It's a splash of blue and a sea of red, and it's very very odd. It
We
had
we couldn't get
potential.
a like the shell logo works because the Ferrari was already, red and yellow in their colors, so it blended in the shell logo, which is red and yellow. But the blue and white, we couldn't get a modified HP logo, or maybe make it a little bit small. It is like right in the middle of that the driver's suit. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, is that all you got on those guys?
Yeah.
Okay. The other big player, although maybe less of a big player in 2025, Red Bull, rolling with the Verstappen and Liam Lawson lineup, which was a shock to us because I think you and I both had kind of put Yuki into that seat.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously there was other players before that, like the possibility of maybe a Sainz move, or
Sure.
the possibility way back of a Daniel Ricciardo before that was ruined. But I think once we established that it wasn't going to be any of those players, then of the two at AlphaTauri, or I'm sorry, VCarb, of the two drivers at VCarb, I think our pick was definitely Yuki Tsunoda just because of his tenure. But shocking the
But
world.
and I don't think we're mad at the move. I think that shows Red Bull's focusing, on the next up and comer drivers, and maybe they've seen enough out of Yuki to know that he's not the guy. And I think that's fine. But here's what Liam Lawson is going to have to contend with this year. So everybody knows that Red Bull had a dominant 2022, a dominant 2023, but in 2024, the car started to show signs pretty significantly in the middle of the season that it was not to the same standard as the McLaren and the Ferrari and even the Mercedes at times. It had fallen behind. So they did an interview, I think motorsport.com or one of those other outlets did an interview with Pierre Wache. I hope I'm saying that right, who is the technical director over at Red Bull. And they were pretty blunt. They were like, hey, your car fell behind last year. There's no getting around that. Even with Max winning the drivers, you could tell that the Red Bull was, fourth, sometimes fifth in performance, depending on the track that it was in. What happened? And I really appreciated his explanation because we always know that Max likes a car with highly sensitive steering. Like most drivers would consider it oversteering because he wants that pinpoint accuracy. But he explained it way better than that. He said that their cars are built to operate within a window, a peak performance window, if you will. And those windows, the smaller they are, the better the car can operate because you're narrowing in on what the car is capable of. And the smaller the window, the more peak performance it can have. And he pretty much said that half of 2023 and all of 2024, they had the wrong window. It was set wrong for each track that they went to. It was set wrong for their drivers. And the performance of Max and Checo in 2023 combined covered a lot of those issues up to where the engineers didn't even know that they were issues. And the drivers might have just thought, oh, there's a little bit of oversteer here or there, whatever. But they were so good, it wasn't showing issues. 2024, the issues overcame the drivers. They definitely overcame Checo Perez as he quickly fell down. Where did he finish? Like eighth in the
Yeah,
standings?
behind all of the other top teams.
Yes. So Checo's down. And then Max, of course, won, but it was a struggle and a fight, and he wasn't always in top form. And so even Max couldn't overcome the car. And so they said, what are you doing to fix that? And Pierre basically said, I'm not making the window any smaller. He said, I'm not going to open up that window because the second you open up the window, the car loses performance, and our goal is to make the fastest car. But he said, we're going to do everything we can to make sure the window's in the right spot. So I kind of appreciated that. Like he recognized they were at fault for the car being bad, but he also isn't going to sacrifice performance, which you can't. You can't sacrifice performance when you've got McLaren on a heater and Ferrari and Mercedes all on heaters. You can't open up that performance window.
We've talked about this in the past in terms of Checo. Um, we've kind of poked fun at him just because of how good Max was doing. That Checo is nowhere near the abilities of Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton. He's all the way back behind these guys in terms of skill. I think the light is finally getting shown that The reality is that car started to become garbage. And the only reason why that's not the first place that all of our minds went to is because Max was still winning races. And I don't think that's a testament to Checo as much as it is a testament to the abilities of Max Verstappen. I think the fact that he was able to take a car that was arguably the third or fourth best car on the track and still win a driver's championship just shows how good of a driver he really is. And in reality, if you're looking at the average driver, who's a skilled driver, by the way, a race winner, Checo Perez, where he was finishing is where that car should have been finishing.
Exactly. And the direct quote from the Red Bull technical director, "You want the fastest car compared to the others. I will not reduce the overall potential to make it easier operationally. You can reduce the potential to help drivers use the car, but not to help the engineers use the car." Pretty insightful stuff. I that was the best explanation for how an engineer gets a car ready that I've heard.
Yeah.
What do you have on the pairing of Verstappen and Lawson?
Lawson's been doing a lot of podcasting. I'll leave it to the viewers to go check out those podcasts because it's always cool to see him showing his personality now. Now that he's had a little bit of a light shown on him as a top tier F1 driver, being in a top team. He's a pretty funny dude, pretty lax guy, kind of guy that you would want to hang out with. Not doing too much of the posting on social media. I mean, he has the big switch up where he's wearing his Visa Kesha or B whatever jumpsuit, and then he's like starts to unzip it, and then boom, it jumps to him zipping up the Oracle Red Bull Racing suit, and it's a pretty cool transition. Max, on the other hand, every single picture is either him in some Red Bull attire or him dressed up, dude. I mean, like tuxedos or suits or just like his most recent post is him in all white with white sneakers, but he's got like a white sports coat, a white undershirt with a turtleneck, and white, dress pants, and he's holding a Red Bull can. It's just, that's his personality right now. I think he's living up to the fact that right now he is the man in the scene, and what he's probably not posting right now is that then he goes home to his sim racing rig and starts sim racing. That's about all his life is right now. Oh, except for Kelly Piquet, who apparently, I guess, they're expecting. So congratulations on that end.
They are, and we talked about this. Their child, if it turns out to be an F1 driver, whether a boy or girl, needs to have a hyphenated last name of Piquet Verstappen or Verstappen Piquet.
Can you imagine? Hold on. First of all, I'm going to preface this because I also added to that joke. He needs to have the first name Juan, middle name Manuel. So his full name is Juan Manuel Piquet Verstappen. Can you imagine kids or parents entering their kids into a go-karting championship race, and on the list of the other drivers, it just says Juan Manuel Piquet Verstappen? Like, oh my God.
That kid, if they can pull that off, would be a menace to the racing world.
Oh, dude. And if he has the same aggression that Max had in his younger years, oh, dude. Kid's going to be a freak of nature on the track.
The same aggression as any of the drivers in that family, Yos or Nelson Piquet, like any of them.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. Okay, I have two more talking points. I'm gonna hit Williams and Carlos, and I have one more that is concerning to me. McLaren fans, stick around for that. Starting with Williams and Carlos Sainz, not necessarily that I'm happy Carlos ended up at Williams. I think Carlos should be on a top team still. We've debated that enough. Not even debated. You and I are, I think, in agreement that he should be on a top team. But Williams isn't the worst of the back markers. He's not at Kick. He's not at Haas. I think Williams is definitely the better pick. I think Williams is even better positioned than Alpine right now, so I'm not too mad about that. But a lot of people had questions over why Carlos had picked Williams to go to when he had to have other opportunities available. And he said that early on in his search, it was looking for a team that was going to be the fastest in 2025. And he said he was looking for teams that had improved on their downforce and were just quick. But he said that was a little bit narrow-minded and a little bit like short-term thinking. So he broadened his his thought process to be more long term. Like, what team can I build a future with? What team is building a future that's going to be successful for them overall? And it reminded me of when you and I talked about Fernando Alonso moving to Aston Martin. It was a very controversial move. I think it was very confusing because Aston Martin was terrible and they hadn't said anything about improving. We knew Lawrence was at the helm, but we didn't know how much Lawrence was investing. We didn't know that he was going to be building a brand new facility. We didn't know that he was going to be getting Adrian Newey. Like, we didn't know any of that. And then overnight, Aston Martin went from like eighth on the grid to fifth. I mean, they were winning races that first year for a little bit, and then they dropped down to fourth or fifth place.
Well, they were never winning races, unfortunately, because
They were
that was the year
close.
that Max
Yeah,
had the supercar, and
that's right.
he was winning races by 35 seconds. But then it was Fernando Alonso in second place, and
For a half a season, they were two.
yeah. And what's crazy about that is Fernando Alonso was gapping the other F1 teams. So if Red Bull didn't create that supercar, if they had a car that was on pace with the Ferraris, Mercedes, McLarens, Aston Martin would have dominated the first half of that season, no doubt, up until, the team started bringing upgrades and they fell behind.
Yeah.
But, regardless.
They're still getting there.
Right.
I was going to say, I don't know if Carlos is going to have a similar trajectory, and maybe you can counter that and say that he will, but I do think he is going to bring Williams up a little bit in the world.
I think the pairing of Williams and Carlos Sainz is going to be way more dramatic of a move than people are expecting. And it's not just a matter of a backmarker team bringing on a top driver that will help them, instead of finishing in 13th and 14th, they're going to finish in 11th and 10th more often. Maybe in the first season, but the fact of the matter is this. There's a podcast that I like to watch that you should definitely check out on YouTube. It's called High Performance, where they have multiple different people from multiple different fields, multiple different genres, whatever, that basically they bring them in and it's like, what does high performance mean to you? And one of the guests that they had was James Vowles. This is where it gets interesting because James Vowles' input was straight up, I don't care about 2023. I don't care about 2024. And I don't care about 2025. What he's doing is he wants his engineers to push every aspect of the car to the absolute limit. He's expecting crashes. In fact, if the team's not crashing, they're not pushing boundaries. They're not pushing limits. He's basically throwing away these seasons because what he wants is for 2026 for all the engineers to have all of this experience on limitations of the car, on limitations of what the drivers can do, so that in 2026 they can put all of the things that they've learned for the past 3 years together on these new dynamics, these new regulations to build a way better car. Now, you add on to the fact that they already had Alex Albon, who I know you might not think so much, but I know Alex Albon is a top-tier driver. Partnering him with Carlos Sainz, who I know you can agree with this one, is a top-tier driver. And you have two of those drivers in a car where they've done nothing for 3 years but experiment. Dude, I think James Vowles single-handedly is going to bring Williams back to the forefront of F1, back to the front of the grid, competing with the best of them, just like they were in the early 2000s and 90s.
That ties in really well to this quote from Carlos. So Carlos gave this quote in an interview, I think this was to F1.com. He said, "Finally, I realized that my decision had to be based on two things, the project and the people. When I started discussing more in detail with James Vowles, I realized that he had put together a very strong project at Williams. He was forming a team with a vision, with a project, together with team owners, which is important to have the backing of your team owners on these things because it takes money, that I think is going to bring this team back to the front." That's a bold statement. I mean, I know every driver comes in saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to win championships," but Carlos is smart. Like Jeremiah mentioned, he's a top tier driver. There's no real debate with that. I mean, not like Max Verstappen, Lewis level, but like one notch below that probably.
Right.
If he sees it, then there is a path for it to happen. Not saying that Williams is going to win a championship in the next 2 to 3 years. I don't know about that. But if they play their cards right, if they get the financial backing that they need, if they get the right data and information from their drivers, he sees the team in place under James Vowles that can accomplish that. And Carlos has seen that. Carlos has seen teams work and do well. So he knows what he's looking for.
I'll add one more thing to this. James Vowles on that same podcast was talking about, first of all, you have to remember, he was Total Wolff's number one guy. He was number 2 at Mercedes and was learning how to manage a team and run a team all from Total Wolff. And in this podcast, he said, what's a better story, to go to a top team and find success, or to go to a team that used to be one of the greats and bring them back to the forefront. And I was like, I got chills immediately. I was like, oh, he's going big. He wants a legacy.
He can build something. He really can. And I hope he does. Again, I don't think we're going to be announcing any Williams championships anytime soon, but if he can get them back in the top, to start with the top 5, that would be incredible.
If they're competing back and forth with Aston Martin on a regular basis, that's a huge
100.
improvement.
100. If they're competing with, if there's a true midfield again, like we used to have back in like the 2015 through 2020 seasons, where it was, Renault at the time, now Alpine, Haas was in the mix occasionally, Williams was in the mix occasionally, and then always one of the top teams like McLaren or Red Bull or Mercedes would fall down one year and be competing in that pack. If they can be competing in that regularly, that's a pretty big move.
Absolutely.
Okay, I have one more thing that is highly concerning to me. So you and I have talked about McLaren a lot in the past year, of course, because McLaren had a really good back half of 2023, pretty much had a really good all of 2024, especially once Lando started winning and then Oscar got wins and then it just ramped up from there. And you and I both said, man, going into 2025, they've got the car. They've got it figured out. They've got the team in place. When we say team, we mean the drivers, the principal, and the factory team. They've got the strategists in place, and they have the fastest car, no doubt about it, on the grid in 2024. And if they just keep up with the upgrades of the other team, they will have the fastest car throughout 2025. I did not see this coming. In an interview with motorsport.com, they interviewed Zach Brown, the CEO of McLaren, and he said, we're going into next year at full strength. I think we're in a different mindset now in terms of the confidence of the team and the amount of bravery that this team is prepared to take in the development of next year's car, talking about 2025.
Okay.
The team is not, let's just tweak a little here and a little there. The car's pretty good. We've got stuff on this year's car that is a brave risk. And dude, I know you've got to be innovative in F1. I know you've got to go out there and you've got to develop, because every other team is out there trying to catch you. I know that. But I think McLaren had so much of a lead on the other teams that they could not be caught.
They very much so should be a tweak here and there, because we've got the best car situation.
We haven't seen the car yet. As of yesterday or today, maybe, they released the sound of the car firing up, and honestly, that doesn't give you much. It sounds like every car from the past 4 years sounds firing up, so and you can't see it. It's just an audio file, so that doesn't give me much. I mean, at least it turns on, I guess, so their brave risk didn't leave to a car. That would be bad if you just clicked the audio clip and there was just dead silence. Some guy in the background, uh-oh. But I don't know what brave risk means. I couldn't find any elaboration on that. I saw some people talking about side pod design. I saw other people talking about aero. I think it's all speculation until the car is actually released. We're not going to know. I'm concerned. I feel like they have a good team. I feel like they have good engineers. Clearly, they built the car that they had in 2024. But that's concerning.
The fact of the matter is that in my opinion, of the top 4 teams, Mercedes was probably the weakest one this past season. Would you agree?
Mercedes or Red Bull.
Yeah, or Red Bull. Those are the teams that should be taking the big risks. not the team that's so far out in front that both of their drivers are winning races frequently and, separating themselves from the rest of the drivers. You should probably be just tweaking your car, making small changes here or there to get a little bit more oomph out of turns or corners or straights. You shouldn't be going in, we're going to go in a completely different direction. The craziest part is that they're doing this in the last year of the regulations.
That's the other weird thing. And so here's what I wonder. So obviously they had to start designing this car last year. They started designing the 2025 car in 2024
Yeah.
early. I wonder if they thought the 2024 car would not be as successful as it was, and now they're maybe in too deep and they can't reverse those decisions.
I don't know. The thing is that they have phenomenal drivers, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. But it's not like they have a Max Verstappen that can hide the faults in the car. I mean, you can plainly see when the car isn't doing what it should be doing. So maybe keep your car as good as it was in 2024 with small tweaks.
Like is Zach Brown walking through the factory looking at the 2025 car going, why did we do this? Why did we do this? Why did we do this?
Guys.
And he can't back out of it now.
Yeah, no, because remember in 2024, in the first like 3 races, they weren't super dominant. The Red Bull was still dominant, but then like the rest of 2024, they were awesome. So, imagine like Zach Brown going up and he's like, guys, I don't like this car. We're not doing so hot. We got to start making changes now in 2025. And then 4 races later, when they're winning races, like, wait, no, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Keep the car the same.
Somebody walked in and said, sir, you said trash it. He's like, well, what'd you do with it? We rolled it out into the lake.
Sir, it's in the trash. That's what you said.
Just pans over to a dumpster with half an F1 car sticking out of it. This is what we need. We don't need Drive to Survive. We need an F1 sitcom.
That'd be great. It's got Ricky Gervais as one of the people that are directing it.
He's Zach Brown. Ricky Gervais is Zach Brown. That's got to be it.
That's awesome.
So I don't know. I guess we'll see. I don't have the date. They might have announced it. What is this? I found an article from Friday the 7th that shows the teams' launch dates for their cars. And as of right now, there's only 3 teams with confirmed dates. I've got Williams on February 14th, Ferrari Feb 19, and Mercedes Feb 24th. Every other team is to be announced. So I guess when they rip that cover off the car and everybody's like, we'll know.
When they rip off the cover and it looks nothing like the rest of the cars, and all the other cars have been trying to copy the McLaren so that they can master that speed.
It's going to match when Mercedes rolled out the Zero Pod design and everybody's like, oh, it's so fast looking. It's like the slowest car.
When all the drivers were first getting introduced to the car, and George was like, I was looking at all the other cars and they all look the same, and then Mercedes took off their cover and I was like, man, that looks fast. It was the slowest car.
It was the slowest car in the grid. Hey, look, if you're in that situation, 9 out of 10 teams went one direction and you went the other, you're either going to be way better than them or way worse than them.
Look, worst case scenario, we'll back out the 2024 car for another round, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. You also made a good point, which we didn't really talk about, which is why would you make these dramatic changes? And again, he could be overselling the dramatic change part a little bit, but he did say brave risk. That was the wording that he used. Why would you do that in the last year of a reg change?
Yeah, it's not like you can make tweaks to the new changes that you made the year after, because the year after it's completely different regulations.
Okay, that's all I've got. Do you have anything else lingering out there?
I wanted to come in here and talk about, Kick Sauber's doing this and Haas is doing that and Alpine is doing that. I'm going to jump through these teams pretty quick. Ready? Here we go. Alpine, I don't care. I just don't. Jag doing is going to be cool to watch.
We just lost our one Alpine subscriber.
And, they'll be cool to watch to see how they did from last year. Haas, I don't like Esteban Ocon. I'm sorry. I don't like his personality. It's bland. It's stale.
But it's BearCon.
Yeah, okay.
How can you hate BearCon?
Esteban Ocon's almost taken on like a villain role in these last couple of years. And so
somebody on the picture that they posted of Ollie Behrman and Esteban Ocon said it's the new kid at school and the bully.
Yeah. Oliver Behrman, I'm going to love to watch because we saw how he performed in the Ferrari and then when he took over in the Haas's. So that's going to be cool to watch. As far as social media goes, he's just posting a bunch of pictures of him prepping for the season. Kimi Antonelli is going to be super awesome to see. Can't wait to see that. Again, just posting pictures of him working out, trying on Mercedes gear, gearing up for the season, just typical stuff. You're really only going to see like established F1 drivers like Lando Norris was posting pictures of him going skiing or snowboarding, and Carlos Sainz was going skiing or snowboarding and posting pictures in private jets, and that's fine and dandy for established drivers, but for these rookies, I mean, Bortoleto, Behrman, Doohan, there's one more, dang it, Bortoleto, Behrman, Doohan, and
Lawson?
I guess you can count Lawson. Yeah. No? Well,
Hadjar.
Isaac Hadjar, V-Carb. They're not going to be posting too much of the lavish lifestyle just yet. I think a lot of their social media was all pretty much just working out and then them in their new gear, just prepping for the season because they're trying to, keep it clean right now. But there's a lot of rookies. We're excited to see where it's going to go. It's going to be a completely different field out there, a completely different look. I'm geared up and ready for this season to start.
It's going to be exciting. Let us know in the comments if we've missed any big news so far this offseason. I mean, I'm sure there is. There's, articles are hard to find here and there because this is just kind of the dead period for F1. But if you've got an inside source, comment. Let us know.
Guys, if you think Gabriel Bortoleto, the Kick Sauber driver, wins the championship, you're crazy. But that would be cool.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye, guys.